WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. Those of you who listen to the show and know me over 30 years, you'll enjoy this next segment because I've waited to have this guy on. We usually have him on around the Super Bowl, sometimes before the Super Bowl. Sometimes the Ravens make the playoffs, and we actually get to talk about that. Been a couple months since I've had John Eisenberg on the program. One of my mentors. He always sort of, sits back from that because he thinks I can't be old enough to be a mentor. But I've been knowing John for over 30 years now, more time back at the Sun. And, of course, you can find his work at Ravens.com, find his books and the history of the league and all of that, the founders putting things together back in the day. Dude, it's been a day. How are you? How is your off season, or is there such a thing?
Oh, there's no such thing. And for the record, I'm definitely old enough to be a mentor. I'll take that one. I'll take the heat on that one.
Well, you know what? You did a good job. I turned out all right for all of you guys that were worried about me back in the day. I'll get to the baseball strike because there's a lot of, there's plenty of grease there to get after. But let's talk about the Ravens. Let's talk about Dick Cass. Let's talk about Sashi Brown. Let's talk about leadership. And then we can talk about the football team. But I don't think anybody should be shocked to see Dick Cass go at 76. But I am very concerned about the next 5 years. I've talked to the folks from the Baltimore Banner. They're putting a new news operation together. I'm sure you're familiar with that. And I was talking about sports just in general. And I said, the big story here, the next 5 years, if I were Marty Kaiser or Jack Gibbons or John Stedman putting together a sports department, I'd be thinking about where the ownership's going here and where the future's going in regard to the baseball team and the football team. And I talked to Marty Conway a lot about this. The tectonic plates are shifting under our city again. And you've seen it happen 3 times: when the Colts left, when the Ravens came, when Camden Yards was built. We're at this point where these stadia are now 3 decades old. Steve Bisciotti's ownership is 2 decades old. The Angelos boys are going to be forced out at some point. We're really at a shifting time. And Dick Cass moving on at 6 o'clock on a Friday and Sashi Brown moving in. There's a transition period happening here for columnist John Eisenberg, right?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, certainly the Orioles more so. Dick Cass leaving and Sashi coming in. I mean, that in itself, I'm not sure the owner of the Ravens is going to be selling off anytime soon. We'll see about that. But Dick Cass leaving is a major thing, and certainly having been on the inside here for a little while, I've learned that firsthand. What an influence he has had on this team and what a positive influence it is. He is a loss. I mean, he has been just really, really, if you follow the Ravens and you like the Ravens, I mean, he's not making any football decisions, but he's always the wise guy, the wisest guy sitting in the corner. And if you like the Ravens because you think they've generally been right thinking on a lot of things and procedures, he has had a key hand in that. I'm talking about how they reach out into the community. I'm just talking about how their methodology, everything. Very, very, a guy that knows where all the bodies are buried in the NFL. There's no question about it. And just very sound, shrewd guy. And a great guy to work for, to be honest. And he will be very missed.
He could have been commissioner, and he scoffed at that and whatever. But if it was his personality to be commissioner, Jerry would have pushed that forward, and he would have gotten a serious look.
Well, he was Jerry's lawyer. He was Jerry Jones's lawyer when Jerry bought the Cowboys. I mean, he knows everything. And he definitely does. He easily could have been commissioner, but the reason he wasn't is he has no ego. He absolutely. How rare is that in sports? This is a guy that really knows all in the most popular sport in America, but he has no ego. So it just wasn't in his DNA to be out front and do all that. So I can hear him even if he were on with us now, joking and saying, who needs that job? He doesn't want that job, but the job he had, he realized was a really good one. And so he just kept it. And, Steve Bisciotti doesn't really love to do the owners meetings and doesn't really get, I think into the nitty gritty of stuff and committees and all that. So it's been Dick. Dick has been the face of the Ravens in the NFL corridor for many years. And, I don't know Sashi Brown. He comes very highly recommended and I'm sure he'll be fine, but Dick will be missed.
Handpicked by Dick. I would think.
Right.
I mean, when it all comes down, I haven't talked to Dick. The 6 o'clock press conference and the NBA, reporters were in on Sashi Brown leaving, and the story was going to happen.
That's where
I'm
it came
interested.
from.
Yeah, I'm really interested in this transition in a lot of ways because I do have so much respect for Dick, and I do know how hard that job is. And watching TJ Brightman get up with the Oriole Bird and try to have a press conference, you see the difference between leadership all the way around. And I think about the stewardship when I think of Dick. And every time I've talked to Dick on the record, off the record, in elevators on game day and in press boxes and just on the air and off the air, Dick was, to your point, the Yoda, the smartest guy in the room. I don't think you replace a guy like that easily. I really don't.
No. I mean, what he did was he established standards. I mean, he didn't make all the decisions. And initially, I thought it was interesting. There's this big flurry. Because Sashi comes from, he was in football operations with the Browns, and the Wizards haven't been very good. But he's being brought in because he's a lawyer. He is not involved in, he's not drafting the linebackers. Dick didn't do that. Dick was really the public facing CEO of the Ravens, and just very much set a standard for virtually everything they do. I mean, any sort of community event, it's like, here, we can do this, we're going to do this, we're going to approach it this way. The stadium, as you were talking about at the outset, the understanding very clearly that the stadium is so important, and that in some respects, with a slightly older one, the Ravens are a little bit outgunned, but he's trying to keep it up to date, and have done a pretty good job so far. It's still an excellent stadium experience. People love to come here. So it just really understands how this thing works, and just a class act. That's all I can say.
John Eisenberg is here. You can follow his work at Be More Eisenberg, as well as his books. What's your latest book? What are you working on now?
I'm working on a book on the history of Black quarterbacks in professional football, going back the whole story, a century, going back to Fritz Pollard in 1920, and through Lamar, and just sort of how it's years and years of discrimination and guys that got screwed, basically. And then how things started to change. What did it look like when it changed? What brought about that change? Has it changed? The answer is yes, but there's still stuff going on, and just the whole story.
Well, I was fortunate enough 2 weeks ago to be out in LA. I got asked to MC the Snoop Dogg Wounded Warriors game. And I went out to South Central LA, and I'm on the field, and Kenny Mayne's throwing footballs and Kurt Warner, and they had celebrities. Jen Welter was out, Bob Golick, a bunch of people. And the announcer came on up top and said, Crenshaw, home of Warren Moon. It was talking about all the players that had grown up in that area. And then Warren Moon sat with me the next day. You talk about a story, right? I mean, for that guy's career and where it started and where it ended for him during that period, where I'm sure you've talked to Shaq Harris amongst others, but Warren Moon really changed a lot of that, I think.
Oh, he definitely did. There's just a couple of guys, and Shaq Harris is another one. They, of course, worked for the Ravens, and people just have no understanding of the fact that, but Shaq Harris, quarterback the Rams, 74, 75, had him in the NFC Championship game. When he did that, and 74, 75, I mean, I'm a senior, I'm in high school. I mean, it's not that long ago.
You're all about Roger Staubach then. Don't lie, right?
It's not that long ago. He's like the first black quarterback, the first one that was on the field, didn't lose his job, kept his job, was in the playoffs, just was a guy there playing. He's like the first one. It's in the 70s. And then, yes, to your point, then Doug Williams, of course, gets drafted in 78. He was another one. And Warren Moon was the first one who was just great. He was the first one who was great. And all you need to know about where I'm going with this book is, the story. He didn't even get drafted. He's undrafted.
They made him play in Canada for a decade.
Yeah, 6 years. He had to play. He didn't play 2 years, played 6 years, won 5 championships. And they finally, he's 27. It's like, well, okay, I think maybe it's time. And so, it's an amazing story, these guys. I mean, he's in the Hall of Fame. He didn't even get drafted. That's all you have to know.
John Eisenberg is here. We would draft him in the first round, maybe second round, depending on the class. And he's here. You can follow him. So for the Ravens in the offseason and from where they go from here, it's not often you have to pound sand for 9 months on a 6-game losing streak, right? And certainly this eats at John, it eats at Eric. The injuries. I mean, Luke, we did a retrospective earlier in the week, and we started talking about injuries and comeback. It took Luke 15 minutes just to get through all the names. Oh, there's Stanley, and there's Peters, and there's Humphrey, and there's
It's
Boyle,
really
and
bad.
there's and maybe Calais comes back, and maybe Bose. This is really when all the questions are there. And I'll tell you, this time last year, I had you on the show in this time, and then I had you on in May, and we're like, boy, Eric really checked the boxes, man. I mean, he's even going to sign Justin Houston. They're going to have a pass rush. Yeah, they lost Judon, but they got these running backs, and they drafted a wide. And you feel good because they're good at what they do. They know what their needs are. They know where their weaknesses are. But there was no way to know that Ronnie Stanley wasn't going to stand upright. Nick Boyle wasn't going to get on the field. And then all the injuries that actually happened. Now there's the aftermath where it's even heightened to some degree to say, all right, is Stanley coming back? But is Peters coming back? These other guys that got injured, we have this thing in sports, I think even as sports writers, and we're a little more astute about it because we've seen these guys in these body bags and training rooms and ice and trainers. We've seen their scars. We've seen them limp. But we just say, well, he'll be back next year. He'll be fine.
Right.
It didn't work that way with Ronnie Stanley, and it doesn't work that way for everybody. And when it doesn't work that way, you really, really struggle. And I think the organization right now, on the back end of 8-3 becomes 8-9. This is a really weird offseason for how they feel about themselves and their own personnel, but how they project into September with health.
Oh, absolutely. And let's be honest here, injuries, without question, you lose as many good players as they did, really good players. By the late in the season, it was a diminished team. I don't think that's any secret. But injuries were not the only thing that went on. I mean, Lamar had some issues, really for the first time in his career. It didn't look so great at times. And the guys that were on the field were, and I'm not just talking about the guys off the street that they plugged in. There were some issues with some guys, and Hollywood, a really good player, but he didn't catch a touchdown pass. I think the last 10 games, there's stuff going on, and so they got some work to do. There's some work to do here to put these pieces back together, and not knowing who for sure. You got a pretty good idea, but you not knowing for sure who'll be there makes it tougher. It's a tough job. I mean, you finish 8-9, you got some work to do. I don't care. You can't just say, oh, well, injuries, everything's going to be fine. I mean, that it's very helpful, but there's a lot of work to be done, and you got a new defensive coordinator. Don't even know, tons of question marks on defense. And so, not enough plays on the back end. There's a lot going on there. So a very interesting offseason for the team for sure.
Well, you mentioned like decisions that need to be made on all of this. The wide receiver group feels to be the deepest, and now Hollywood feels like he wants a different situation for him, maybe more like his cousin at this point. But for Eric and putting this thing together, salary cap, everything starts with the quarterback, right? Everything starts
totally.
with, is he a $40 million guy, a $20 million guy? What can we count on in 23, 24, 25, 26 for cap numbers over the next 5 years? And I was at the press conference 2 weeks ago, one of the few times I've been in the building in the last couple of years. And to see Eric talk about negotiating with this kid who's not the most sophisticated kid, certainly about money and about life. And he plays football. He plays video games, for crying out loud. I no agent, mom's involved. I don't know that there's any precedent for how this is going to go. And Eric talks in his tones of, we have a great relationship and all that. There is nothing about this that's not unorthodox for a player at this point, as an MVP of the league, to be negotiating his own deal. It feels really foolish. As the dad in me, the 53-year-old guy in me says, if this were my kid, we'd find the best agent we could find, and we would make sure that we're doing things the right way. This feels really strange to me.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you on any of that. It is strange. The lack of an agent is odd. I mean, it was one thing when he came out of college and he did that, and I think his mom I don't know this for a fact, but I'm just got my ear to the ground and sort of reading between the lines. I think she was a little more involved at that point. Seems like she's less involved at this in this time around, and it's really just the player and the. I mean, as Eric said, I'm talking to the player. That's what he said. He said very simply. And so it is, that in itself is unusual. And with so much money at stake, that just, times 5 makes it strange. So there's no telling where this will go. And I don't know. I used to think it was just a question of when, not if. And I still do believe they'll work it out, but I don't know that it's going to happen real soon.
John Eisenberg is here talking all things football. You can find him out on the interwebs at Be More Eisenberg. Of course, his books also out there. I saw you getting some shout outs on your history of how the league was created, getting some love as football season was over. What'd you make of football season? Joe Burrow and the LA Super Bowl. I was out there for that. I mean, the combine's going to get dragged out there. It's changing times for sure. And from a wet dream perspective of the league, I was there when Kroenke was lying about moving the team to LA, and they moved the team to LA. They're going to have a Super Bowl in LA. The Rams are going to be in the Super Bowl and then win the Super Bowl at home. I mean, this was, if they were to have orchestrated the Los Angeles move after 25 years of not having a team there, they did that pretty well. I don't know that it's going to catch on. I don't know that the Rams are ever going to be the Lakers or the Dodgers, because I was out there and it feels like there's no pulse for the football team, even though they've been in 2 Super Bowls and now won 1 at home. It doesn't feel like LA's team, but from a result standpoint, for what the league wanted to do to go back to LA and build this stadium, have that home base, have a team. I don't know what the Chargers are going to be in London or something, I guess. But in the end, the league won again. Even with the halftime show, they won.
They definitely won with the halftime show. But yeah, the whole thing, it did feel orchestrated. That's what's funny, because I know it's not. It's actually, I mean, the result on the field is not orchestrated. However, it did. You see the Rams win in the game in the stadium, and all the things you said are right. I mean, I don't think they really. I have family members in LA, and they're Dodger fans, they're Laker fans. I asked them, well, how about the football team? They're like, I mean, they're not. And these are young guys, right in the sweet spot. And they're like,
but this speaks to community, John. I mean, you grew up in Dallas, and people loved the Cowboys because it was your team. And then the Rangers came, and it probably took a lot longer with Short and the Rangers and Nolan Ryan 20 years later, and all the seasons in hell that Mike Shropshire wrote about in the beginning. But provincialism and loving Baltimore is the reason I love the Orioles. I love the Ravens. There is none of that in LA. There is no, it's LA's thing or whatever. And that's something that the league's moved beyond. The league's about gambling now, and about fantasy, and about pick your favorite color and pick your favorite team and bet on it. Bet. It's not about win one for old Pittsburgh or win one for old Cincinnati. No. That's not the way they market the league.
It's content. It's content. It's content that can be taken and used for a variety of things, gambling being one of them. But the games are content now. Look, the Thursday night games, they're going to be on Amazon, I believe. They're going to be on Amazon. I don't know how that's going to work with the streaming services or network TV, or when it's your team. But it's going to a streaming service. It's going to Amazon Prime. Hey, I'm a member, so great. I'll get to watch the games, but
you get it first.
Yeah, way good for me. But so it's definitely content, and so you're not that worried about my relatives in Los Angeles that don't care that much about the Rams. Did they tune in to watch the game? Yes. Have they been to a game? Yes. But was that a great backdrop for with the most incredible stadium ever? And was that a great big time backdrop? It sure was. And so it's definitely a win. And
I don't know it created any LA pride, though. You know what I mean?
No, I didn't create any pride. They certainly enjoyed I was watching their parade, and I was like, well, good for them, but it all felt a little like, how much, as somebody was saying, how much of those fans sweated, through various things. They didn't even have the team, but whatever, that's sort of where we are. And, the people in St. Louis got a ton of money out of the league. for reneging, for the Rams reneging on the what they had signed in St. Louis. But whatever, they did it, and that's where they are. And it was no question a success.
Nothing sticks to the league, right? Nothing sticks to
Yeah.
Dan Snyder. Nothing sticks to Stephen Ross throwing games, incenting coaches to lose. Do you think this is going to be ugly? Do you think, I mean, is this going to get uglier congressionally and whatnot? Because it feels like the league acts with complete impunity no matter what. Like,
Uh, yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's been scandals. There's been tons of them, and there's going to be more. There's always scandals, and
it's content.
yeah, there's a lot more money on the table now. Listen, I've written a lot of history of the NFL, and they almost had a championships game being thrown.
Bubba Smith would tell you one was so.
Yeah, right. I know. Yeah. So who knows? There's always something going on. They got huge television ratings. People love football, and yeah, they got some bad actors doing some stuff, and it'll be dealt with, and it could get ugly. But I think I don't see it being derailed.
Going to see Paul McCartney, or are you going to see a baseball game, or do you have to pick one or the other?
I don't. I'm going to be actually on vacation that week. I was surprised to see that date come up with my family, but the good news is my wife and I saw Paul McCartney 6 years ago in Hershey, PA.
I was at that show. Good night.
Yeah,
it was a
was
beautiful
good
night.
one. People were sitting there. They're all sitting in their seats, and he's there playing. And I stood up and said, "This is a Beatle, for crying out loud." When you want to stand up and get a little excited about being here. But they weren't. But anyway, he puts on a great show still.
Well, baseball, anything at all? I mean, you and Wick are there waiting for the crack at that. My buddy Brian over at the Chaucer in Highlandtown, one of my sponsors, said they're offering me an opening day bus, and I'm like, okay,
No
so I gotta give money for tickets. I gotta buy a bus, rent a bus. I gotta sell tickets to customers saying it's going to be on March whatever or April whatever. You guys aren't even playing. You don't even have a plan to play at this point. It's a broken record, dude. You and I go back to 1994 with all of this. Probably go back to 81. They're blind about this. It really is amazing to me. Even the Orioles announcing this McCartney thing, and John Angelo shows up on a Zoom. Dude, you're locked out. Go work on things. Go bring the game back. And I don't sense that you and Wick and me are as upset as we were 30 years ago about baseball
that's
not
we know
appearing.
It's going to get settled. That's because eventually, but there'll be some damage done. I think we'll probably miss opening day. And who knows how many games they'll play, but they will settle it. I mean, I have been through the many rounds of this thing. And, there's only one where the nuclear option was brought in. I don't see that happening this time when they're really arguing about service time and the pie's a lot bigger. They're arguing about cutting up the pie. And yes, the only thing that's changed with this going on compared to say 25 years ago is baseball's place sort of in the minds of American sports fans.
But not there. In their mind, it's still 1958 and the world's great. Like literally, they're behaving as though they don't have an image problem.
Yeah. I mean, they got to really be careful. There's a lot of baseball fans out there, people that love it, people that will be happy if and when the game comes back. And, and I'm one of them. But certainly, it's not as the percentage of it, how much it permeates the minds of the collective American sports psyche is not what it was. And so there's a lot of we could do a whole nother show on that. But you got to be really, really careful with taking it away at a time when when your market share is not going up. You better not just take it away, because there's lots of other things going on. Women's soccer, people they like that, there's stuff going on. You better watch it, and don't take your game away, because there's lots of other stuff going on.
Yeah, I know I'm an old white guy at this point at 53, but I got a lot of money left to spend in me the next 20 years. You know what I mean? I went up to see John Mayer in New York the other night, going to concerts. I'm spending my money in other places. And one of the reasons I didn't feel so bad about spending another $50 on John Mayer than I wanted to spend, which is I haven't bought a hockey ticket, a basketball ticket, a football ticket, a baseball ticket. I haven't bought tickets in years, and I have no intention of giving my money to the Orioles, even if for Paul McCartney maybe. But where money goes and where my heart is in regard to the Orioles, it's like if you don't want my money the next 20 years, if I'm too old for you and too vested in knowing the history of the game and being there all this time, why they would want to sell off their fan base when they don't have the fill in. That's and it really does smack of arrogance. I mean, there's an arrogance about this that y'all will come back whenever we decide to play. And that worked 30 years ago. I was annoyed by it on the radio then, back in 94 and 95, and it worked here specifically because of Cal Ripken and the kind of team they had in Camden Yards. Boy, in 2022, I look up and say, where is Baseball King? I was out in LA last week. I saw a lot of Dodgers and Anaheim Angels hats. I saw more of it in LA than I see almost anywhere else.
LA, I would say, yeah. Chicago does okay.
I saw a Mets hat in New York the other day. Felt bad for the guy.
Yeah, there's less in New York than it used to be, but certainly the Yankees. I mean, you cannot, and the Mets. I mean, yeah, it's and the Red Boston. They're good. There's lots of stuff. There's places. It's still there. I mean, it's still baseball. And it's something very special, and I love it. But there are things going on that I just don't like. The tearing apart of the minor leagues. Just almost casual wave of the hand,
or the fact that we're just not going to compete this year. We're gonna beg you to bet on the games, but we're really not trying to win. So wink, wink, go bet on it, but we're not trying to win. What do you think? You want to bet against the? I mean, that's the weirdest part is where teams aren't trying.
Yeah, you got to be careful with that too. When it comes to the Orioles, I will say this: I haven't watched them, and I've watched these games in the rebuild, and that is, I understand what had to happen here. Something did have to happen, and things have happened here because I wrote a fair amount about how they had nothing in the Dominican Republic for years, refused to put money into it, and fell behind. They were strictly draft picks here for years, and there's almost no way you're going to be good at that. And the minor league system was no good. A rebuild from scratch needed to happen out of view of what the fans see. And I think they've probably done a pretty good job of that. I may not like the way, some of the outcomes and maybe the dismissal of some of the personalities involved. You cannot like that, but I think they've done a pretty good job of doing what a team has to do now. That is have an academy in the Dominican Republic, the Latin players, be smarter about drafting, embrace analytics. They've done a lot of things right. They have. There's no evidence of it on the field yet at the major league level. And
the one thing you have to do is lose to get Adley Rutschman. You know what I mean? Like, you have to lose in order to get better players. That's just a fact.
They got some hitters now, some guys, some position players, not as many pitchers, but some position players in the pipeline that I think will be pretty good. And the team will be better in the next 2 or 3 years. Then they're into the classic situation of what do we need to win? Where do we pencil in things? Can we do that? A whole nother situation. However, I do think, having said all that positively, I also think they're at a point where, again, as I said earlier, you got to be careful with, you got baseball fans here, fans of the Orioles, people who love the team, want to go to the stadium and watch. And if you give them 5 years of just not competing, you're flying close to the sun there of really discouraging a lot of people. You got to give them something. I'm talking at the major league level. Even while this rebuild is going on and you're doing a good job of it, you better give them something, because you cannot this is an entertainment product. The world we live in, there's a lot of competition. You better not just give them nothing. You better give them something over at some point, or you're running the risk of losing them.
They gave you a Beatle, Eisenberg. They gave you Paul McCartney, and you're not even going to you're missing the highlight of the whole baseball season, if there is a baseball season this year.
I'll be at Smith Mountain Lake, Virginia.
listening to Revolver and Meet the Beatles. So no question, maybe the White Album. John Eisenberg is here. He is B. More Eisenberg. And when does your book on black quarterbacks come out? Does it have a working title yet?
No, it doesn't. Well, it has a working title. No, I'm not going to get into the title because it may be changing.
Okay.
And it's actually not out this year. It's going to be
okay.
out next year. It's a big canvas, a lot to work on.
Well, and a big story to be told there as well. And you tell them better than anybody. You can find John Eisenberg out at Ravens.com. You can find him at B. More Eisenberg out on the Twitter thing. And not here often enough, but always makes it awesome when he is here. John, I appreciate you, man. And I'm sorry we don't have press conferences anymore. I don't get to rub elbows. We don't, get out anymore. Hopefully the plague's going away and I get to see your smiling face on a football field for passing camp sometime soon. Okay.
Well, I'll believe it when I see it. Maybe one of these days it'll all be back to normal.
From your lips to God's. You're never letting us back in the locker room, but we'll talk about that next time. John Eisenberg is here. I am here as well. The Maryland Crab Cake Tour will commence and restart on March 4th. Looking forward to eating some crab cakes here this spring. We're starting at Mama's on the Half Shell down in Canton with the Nacho Mama's family on the square. We're going to be getting that going March 11th, 18th, 25th, and through the month of May. We're going to be hitting a whole bunch of places in the city. And then in August, doing the Maryland Crab Cake Tour all over the state, presented by the Maryland Lottery, as well as our friends at Wise Markets. I am Nestor. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore positive.